let's see what we can do. So yesterday I was live on Instagram and I was doing some stuff as far as like sharing some resources, and I was like, let me go on Facebook and YouTube and see how it goes. My dog is here. If you hear him, know that he's excited about this as well. Also, tonight, me and my friend B Jackson, aka Action Jackson, we're gonna talk conspiracies tonight. Or not, I don't know, but that's gonna be like 6:30 if you want to come back and see me, because hello, we're all bored since it's a quarantine. Anyway, I wanted to share some resources because, as many of you know, before I went and did media, which I'm still doing, I was in a civil rights. I am still an attorney. I shouldn't say was. I'm a civil rights attorney. Live. Hey, I see Kathy's there. Hi, Kathy. I can't see everything, but anyway, I just decided to go in here since we all have some time that we did think we have, and I've been asked in the past a few times, like, Brooke, you know a lot about Black history and all of that. Do you have some books that I should read? And I'm like, I mean, where do I begin, right? Like, I have a bunch of books. So I said, let me get on. I was on live on Instagram, and I said, let me get here on Facebook and YouTube and just sort of share some books that I think, if you have time, if you want to read and sort of just like gain some more Black history or history about civil rights in this country. These are some good books. These are only the beginning. As you can see, I have a whole bookshelf, and this ain't even all my books. Like, I have a whole other bookshelf in New York, and there are books in the garage. This is just some of the books, like, to get you started. So, excuse me while I bend down and take these books. So, the first book that I think is good, it's called Thinking About Race, and it's like a primer into race, discussion of race, critical race theory. It's thin, but don't let the thinness fool you, because it's very jam-packed with things to sort of giving you definitions of what's race, mixed race, colorism, non-white racism, non-white racism. It's all in here. And what I really like about this, I don't know if you can see it, but like at the end of each chapter, they're like discussion questions. So you can read it alone, you can read it with a group. It's a nice way to get going on that, by Naomi, Zack. Again, it's thin, but it's a great primer on understanding race and like what are people talking about when they talk about privilege and all that kind of goodness, you know, just to get going. So that's the first one. That's one of the ones. Another one. So this is the classic slave narratives. I think there's like 4 slave narratives, including the one of Frederick Douglass, Linda Brandt, Equiano, and then Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. You can read all of this. I've read most of these, but I read this a long time ago, freshman year of college, 2003. So, but I feel like if you want to be serious about learning about Black history, you have to read at least one slave narrative. You got to do it. You can't be telling me I care about Black history or African American history and you haven't read a single slave narrative. So pick this one up, read one, read all. They're great, very fascinating. This book has been through, as you can tell. It's old, but you can get them, and you can get them in like single as well. But I recommend this because it has 4. Another great kind of primer is Black trials. So I'm a civil rights attorney. I know a lot of civil rights laws, but there have been some key laws that have happened throughout, or 3 cases rather, that have happened throughout Black history that are important. And this book does a great job of looking at cases beginning from the Amistad, so before we officially had slavery as it became in America, and then you have during slavery kind of with Dred Scott, and then you have during Reconstruction with the civil rights cases. You also have the cases of the Ku Klux Klan, because after slavery you had Reconstruction law that was meant to really protect Black people, but unfortunately we saw the beginning of the Ku Klux Klan, a white terrorist organization that terrorized newly freed Black people. And so there are Supreme Court cases. These are all like Supreme Court cases, and the story behind them is so fascinating, including all the way to the Scottsboro Boys, which is the case that is Harper Lee loosely based To Kill a Mockingbird off of. Very fascinating case. and the facts around there and the boldness and courage of the judge. So I highly recommend this one, Black Trials, Citizenship from the Beginnings of Slavery to the End of the Caste, by Mark Weiner. Weiner. If I didn't misspell or mispronounce his name. Another good one, and this is one that I didn't realize until I saw this book. A bookstore was closed, and I was like, let me see this. But it's called At the Dark End of the Street, Black Women, Rape, and Resistance, A New History of the Civil Rights Movement from Rosa Parks to the Rise of Black Power. And I know a lot of people tend to think that Rosa Parks was this woman who was just very docile and I'm tired, I'm not getting up. But Rosa Parks was a G. You know what I'm saying? She was an NAACP secretary. She was not here for this foolishness. And before she went to jail, she, like I said, she was a secretary for the NAACP, and she would go and investigate the rapes of Black women. And this book is about Reese Taylor, a Black woman who I think only recently passed, but was unfortunately gang raped, I think, by some white men in 1950s, 1940s South. And of course, I can't even imagine the horror, but this book details that and the role that women played, the significant role that women played during the Civil Rights Movement, and sort of sheds light on their the influence of women, and sort of gives a new view of Rosa Parks. So it's a great book if you want to just sort of learn something new, or maybe you already knew that, and that's great. Speaking of Black women, I am currently reading this, When and Where I Enter by Paula Giddings, and so far it's excellent. It's with Ida. I'm reading the part about Ida B. Wells and her role in dealing with lynching, and how a lot of people just sort of assume certain things. Well, you know, you were doing this and that, and realizing, and I think because things happened to them, they realized, oh wait, this isn't because Black people don't know how to act, that's why they get lynched. It's because America's racist. And so, like I said, I'm still reading it, so I can give a fuller review of that, but I'm loving it so far. And Paula Giddings, this is her classic, you know, seminal piece of work, and they really launched her career. She's excellent. And then, of course, I'm just going to conclude, because I could go on and on and on and on, with The New Jim Crow. I feel like everyone, if you haven't even heard of this, I don't know where you've been. Like, what rock have you been living under? But The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, I've seen her speak on it in person. As a matter of fact, I think, did she autograph this one? Yes, she did. It's autographed. But it's an excellent book showing how we tend to think that Black history in this country is linear, and that came over as slaves, we got free, then there was Jim Crow, then the Civil Rights Movement, and yay, a Black president. And that's just not the case. History is cyclical, and so Black people came over, they actually were not enslaved initially, not the way that it became entrenched and codified in the laws. That was a process, and then eventually Black people were free. You had Reconstruction laws, and there was a lot of great Black progress. This hello, Ida B. Wells type situation. But then there was aggression, then you get Jim Crow, and that gives way to the need for the Civil Rights Movement later. And what she is arguing, and which I have found to be the case as a civil rights attorney, is there's also this, again, this regression from protecting Black people with the laws, and you see this with the war on drugs and how it's really used to change. So you can't discriminate against someone because they're Black anymore, at least not blatantly, because we all agree that's wrong. But what if you're a felon? We don't like felons. No one cares if you lock a felon up, take away all their rights. So the 13th Amendment within it kind of had the roots for how this could happen, because it says you can't enslave people unless they've been convicted of a crime. And so there's another book called Slavery by Another Means, which these two are very closely connected, which speaks about how Black codes and vagrancy laws led to basically the reinscribing of slavery in society right after. And so this is talking about how drug laws does the same thing as far as sort of keeping Black people under wraps and under control. And so this is just a great book if you want to know why there's a need for criminal justice reform presently. And I also think during this pandemic, we're seeing that's necessary. A lot of arrests have gone down, and they're letting people out, which shows you probably didn't need to have all those people arrested in the first place, and you didn't need to have all those people locked down. My prayer is that once this pandemic has passed, the worst of it passes, that people will no longer, that states will still continue to have these low arrest rates. But of course, the prison industrial complex, it's a moneymaker, and we know what America's about. So anyway, those are my picks. The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, When and Where I Enter by Paula Giddings, At the Dark End of the Street by Danielle McGuire, The Classic Slave Narratives. This is edited by Henry Skip Lewis Gates. Black Trials by Mark Weiner, and then of course Thinking About Race by Naomi, Zack. I can go on and do some more of these, probably will, because I have so many suggestions. If you have one that you think I should, oh, last one I meant to put this. I don't have in hard copy. I have as a Kindle, which is The History of White People by Neil Painter, who is a Princeton history professor, and it reads sometimes like an encyclopedia, so it's a little dense, but it's so fascinating as well. It's kind of like, where did this creation of whiteness come from? Like, the people originally weren't considered white as we have come to know them. There's a history of how that term and those ideas came to be. And that's a good one too. But if you have any others that you think that I might be missing that I should add to this list, or maybe you want me to do a review of it, I'd be more than happy, because I got time, you got time. And if you want, I think I'm going to repost this and then list all of these underneath the video. So until next time, again, I'll be on later with my friend B. We're going to talk conspiracies, because we're quarantined, and that's what happens. That's what happens. You just start like, hey, you want to talk about this? Yeah, let's talk about this. Let's do this. You want to do this? I'm going to do this. All right, cool. So again, roughly around 6:30 tonight on Good Friday, we're going to talk about conspiracies, because I'm just going to tie it into the cross. Talk about a conspiracy. Definitely on Good Friday, there was a conspiracy going down that ultimately went very wrong for the conspirators come Sunday morning. Stay tuned. All right, I'll see y'all.